Hi, 7th and 8th grade. We are on our very last section when we talk about the tools of the poet. At the very beginning of the school year, we went through 5 of the major themes of poetry, which included nature, religion, or man's relationship with God, death, love. Trying to remember what the others were. I think that was it. Nature, death, love, man's relationship with God. History. Forgot history. So we went through the themes first, and of course there are a multitude of themes that can go, be like subsections of those major themes. And then we start talking about the tools of the poet. And the tools are what the poet uses to express a theme like love or death or history or man's relationship with God. And we have gone through quite a few tools already. For instance, we've talked about the speaker. Right from the very beginning, we had to talk about what a speaker was. The speaker was the character created by the poet to help him or her express the poet's point of view. I'm kind of reviewing on page 43. This is where I first introduced the idea of tools of the poet to you. So if you wanted to look along with me, that's fine. If you just want to listen, that's okay too. But we talked about speakers first, and then we talked about symbols. That's when one thing or color represents something else, and we had lots of pages where we had gemstones, flowers, colors, animals that all represent other things in literature. And remember that poetry is condensed literature, so if it's going to be that way for poetry, it's going to be that way for your favorite novel as well. For instance, I often bring up the Harry Potter books when it comes to symbology because there's a lot of symbology in the Harry Potter books. And when we talk about Hedwig, she's an owl. She's often depicted as a little bit cranky, but very, very, very wise, much wiser than Harry is even. She understands how things work when he doesn't, but she's a bird. She can't really communicate to him other than like nibbling on his fingers or giving him the stink eye or looking a little dejected. So everything's in her body language. She's also white. So there's a purity of thought there, that idea of purity and faithfulness for her. So when we talk about symbology, I mean, it's all over. You're going to find it everywhere. When we talk about novels, we just talked about one set of novels just now, but it's also in your movies. Most of you have watched the Star Wars movie that I asked you to please watch. If you can't watch that because of you don't have it or it's very expensive to rent, you don't have Disney Plus, it's free on Disney Plus. Please just let me know and we'll talk about getting you something else to do. But there's a lot of symbology in the Star Wars films as well. And as you do the film guide for history, you're going to see, like, hey, did you notice this symbol? Did you see this symbol? That's a lot of symbology there. And a lot of it has to do with the thought processes in the 70s with pantheism becoming a big part of American culture. Okay, we talked about motifs, which is probably my favorite little tool. Motifs are a repeated idea that pop up throughout throughout a work. They're often combined with the idea of with symbology. Motifs and symbols are often hand in hand. I just read 2 different books by Laurie Halse Anderson. One of them used the motif of a character journeying through his personal hell as he grows up. He's not a happy person, obviously. And so a lot of his journey, his personal journey is reflected with some of the things he reads, the video games that he is playing, and they all have this motif of journeying through hell to get from one side to the other because she uses Dante's Inferno as one of her inspirations for writing that book. In the other book that I read about by her, the motif was fairy tales. And it was about a girl who is going through her own issue with body image and not feeling like she's being heard and feeling like she's enclosed in a glass coffin like Snow White was. So 2 really good books that had really strong motifs, and that gets me excited because I'm a book nerd. Okay, and then we have tone. That is the attitude of the speaker, and we talked quite a bit about that. We had a real good comparison of good tone versus not so good tone with Winter Sundays versus Winter. In Winter Sundays, the tone was very kind of sad and angry, and then Winter was a very happy tone. Diction is the use of the right word at the right time, and really you see that throughout all of poetry. When a poet does not use proper words at a proper time, they're not usually considered a very good poet, and they don't make it into textbooks. Okay, and then imagery is our last one that we're doing, and I'm pretty excited about it. I like imagery. I like the idea of feeling when I'm opening a book or reading a poem, feeling like I'm enjoying that experience with the author. And that is really the primary definition of literature. It allows people to enjoy the experience with the writer. So it's a shared experience. That is what makes literature literature. And that's why I love it so much. Okay, so we're talking about imagery. And I had a poem that we did last week called My Native Land, and I really tried to make it work, but honestly, after I was all done trying to explain it and make it fit into the category, I'm like, I don't think it's in the right category. So we're just going to take that and say, okay, we learned a poem, we learned what it was about, but it didn't really fit with imagery, but the next one definitely does. So we are going to be looking at a poem on page 179. It's by Shel Silverstein, who is famous for writing children's books and children's poetry. One of his most famous books is called Where the Sidewalk Ends. He also wrote The Light in the Attic, and he wrote a couple of others. I did not grow up with Shel Silverstein in my house. I grew up with Shel Silverstein in my classrooms. I had a teacher in 6th grade. Her name was Mrs. Brew, who was unlike any teacher I'd ever had before. She took the last half hour or so every day, and we, even though we were in 6th grade, we were like practically grown, we sat in a reading area under a window in our classroom, and we sat on the rug, and she read to us for at least a half hour a day. Now, here's where I really appreciated, oh my goodness, she introduced me to so many different characters and so many different authors. But more than that, she really pushed for us to complete our tasks in a timely manner, because the faster we got our work done and got it done correctly, the more time we had to read. And for someone like me who was just learning that I really was a book nerd, a book geek, I loved books. I really wanted to push myself to get my work done, specifically so I could have that reading time. And I still use that as one of my treats for myself. If I get everything accomplished, then I can have some time to read. And so sometimes we would get done really early and we get like almost an hour, and she'd be like, oh my goodness, you guys really want to read for an hour? And the whole class would be like, yes, because we were thrilled with everything she was teaching us. But she brought in she brought in Shel Silverstein poems. That was the first time I'd ever read anything like that or heard anything like that. She was the first person to teach me literature that had a sense of humor, that had magical elements, that had sarcasm in them, which I learned to appreciate very early on. It wouldn't be a shock to anybody to find out Oscar the Grouch is like my favorite Muppet. He's so sarcastic. But growing up, I didn't really have a lot of children's books that were available to me. I read a lot of my sister's textbooks for like 5th grade. When I was in 3rd grade, I was reading those. So I had those, but I didn't have a lot really provided for me at home. So I really depended on what I had at school. So most of you are pretty fortunate that you have parents who've bought you books or who have encouraged you to read, take you to the library or take you to the bookstore after you beg. Okay. But if you don't have books at home, you can get some. Okay. You can get a Kindle app on your phone for free. You have to ask your parents' permission, of course. And you have to have a credit card attached to the Kindle app. But there are things that you can read in the Kindle app for free. You just have to look for them. And then right now during this quarantine, I know that Audibles has children's books for free right now. So you can download the Audible app and then go on to, I think it's called Storytime. You can just explore that. So for all students, those are free stories that you can listen to right now. So this is a great chance for you to explore and grow and teach yourself a little something extra beyond what you're learning in these half-hour lectures. Okay, I really want you to get to the point where you're starting to teach yourself, because that makes all the difference. Now, when I got to junior high, my parents still weren't crazy about me going to the library, and I did check out a few books that weren't necessarily appropriate because I really had no idea what to look for. I was really kind of lost when it came to what books were even available to me. I didn't have a clue what I was looking for. And so my parents finally, when they realized I wasn't going to stop reading, my mom started buying books for me that she and dad approved of and that they could have in the house, and I went through them like crazy. And my mom to this day says it was so frustrating because we'd buy her like 3 books and I'd hand them to her, and like 3 days later she'd be like, okay, I'm done, and yeah, that's me, because I was a fast reader, but I read those books over and over and over again. Okay. So enough about my experience growing up. Let's get ready for your experience growing up. You need to get out there and start reading more on your own. It's the best way to teach yourself. Right now, let's talk about Shel Silverstein. And I strongly recommend his books if you can get a hold of them, either through the library. I know that some libraries have like drop-offs and pickups. You can check the Banning and Beaumont libraries and see if they offer that service. Or you can go online and see if you can get the books. You can buy them used on Amazon, or you can probably find them on Kindle. But let's talk about Shel Silverstein and Noise Day, which is a great sensory poem. It's using imagery, and he does this on purpose. Every poet does. Every poet writes purposefully. They use those tools to get you into their experience and to help you understand what they're trying to say. And so this is one of the wonderful poems by Shel Silverstein, who wrote specifically for children and wrote specifically for the imagery issue. So here we go. Noise Day, Shel Silverstein. Let's have one day for girls and boyses when you can make the grandest noises. Screech, scream, holler, and yell. Buzz a buzzer, clang a bell. Sneeze, hiccup, whistle, shout. Laugh until your lungs wear out. Toot a whistle, kick a can. Bang a spoon against a pan. Sing, yodel, bellow, hum. Blow a horn, beat a drum. Rattle a window, slam a door. Scrape a rake across the floor. Use a drill, drive a nail. Turn the hose on the garbage pail. Shout, Yahoo! Hooray! Hurrah! Hurrah! Hooray! Turn up the music all the way. Try and bounce your bowling ball. Ride a skateboard up the wall. Chomp your food with a smack and a slurp. Chew, chomp, hiccup, burp. One day a year, do all of these. The rest of the days, be quiet, please. Okay. You may have noticed that with the quarantining, sometimes people get a little frustrated being in close quarters for long periods of time, and they need like a little bit of a break. And so that's a good time to go read a book in your room or go outside and water the garden for a family member. Like maybe your mom's a gardener, you can go out and offer to water. Maybe your dad does the dishes, you could offer to do the dishes. Being apart and yet still contributing can be a really great way to make it through this without driving everybody crazy. Okay, so let's go through this. We don't really have to spend a lot of time explaining it because it's pretty self-explanatory. So on Noise Day, he says, let's have one day for girls and boyses. Now, obviously, boyses is not a real word, but he's a poet and he's making one up to fit his rhyme scheme and to be funny. Okay. When you can make the grandest noises. Grandest means largest. So he's talking about making big noise, large noise. The Bible says, make a loud noise, rejoice and sing praise. And then he starts using these onomatopoeias. We've talked about that before. These are words that sound like the sound they make. So screech sounds like a screech, screech. Scream, scream. Holler. It actually sounds like a holler. Hello, how you doing? And yell. Think about when you yell at somebody and you're saying, hey, yell, you're yelling. So those are onomatopoeias. And here's some more. Buzz. Buzz a buzzer. Buzz sounds like buzz. It is the word it sounds like. Clang. Clang is an onomatopoeia, a bell. Sneeze. Hiccup. Hiccup sounds a lot like hiccups. Whistle. And if you have a little space between your teeth, you can actually whistle. It's Gopher on Winnie the Pooh. I used to love it every time he came on and he had that whistle. It cracked me up. Okay, shout. Did you realize that shout sounds like the word shout? Okay, when you're shouting out. And then I love this one. Laugh until your lungs wear out. Everybody has laughed so hard that they hurt. I love that feeling when you laugh and you're just laughing uncontrollably and everything is funny. And then when you try to stop, you realize that, oh my goodness, my sides are killing me. Your lungs give out. You are laughing so hard it hurts. Toot, a whistle. Toot's an onomatopoeia. Kick a can. Kick doesn't really sound like a kick, but I guess it could if you really think about it when it makes that sound on the impact. Kicking a can was a popular game. I never got it. I never understood it. I had a few friends who played it. I never understood it. I was always out. Okay, bang a spoon against a pan. Bang actually sounds like bang. Okay, so bang a spoon against a pan. We're talking about a lot of noise here, but he says make the grandest noises. Blow a horn, beat a drum, rattle a window, slam a door. Now, he's getting away from, making purposeful noise of banging on stuff and everything to rattling a window. Rattling a window is usually what happens when you've made so much noise, especially if you've slammed a door and the windows rattle. Okay? Scrape a rake across the floor. Probably don't do that one. Okay? Unless you're outside and it's scraping against the patio flooring. But I'm wondering, did he know somebody who did this? Who's scraping a rake across the floor? Although I do have a friend who, when she was a teenager, her family had shag carpeting and it was her job every day to rake it. I'm not making this up. That used to be a thing. Okay, use a drill. Zzz. Okay, drive a nail. Turn the hose on the garbage pail. I am sure he's heard this somewhere. If you have a metal garbage pail specifically and you put a hose on it, it makes a lot of noise because it's just banging in there like a drum. And then here we have 3 in a row onomatopoeias for shouting. Shout Yahoo! Hurrah! Hooray! These beautiful sounds of shouting. Turn up the music all the way. I personally don't like turning my music up all the way because I think it distorts the music, but I like it loud. Yeah, I do. My son used to get in the car and say, Mom, could you turn your music down? I'm like, fine, whatever. Okay, try and bounce your bowling ball. If you've ever been to the bowling alley where you have gotten your thumb stuck in the ball just a little bit longer than it should have been, and all of a sudden your ball lofts and boom, hits. Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. Okay, so try and bounce your bowling ball. Ride a skateboard up the wall. That sounded, back when he wrote this sounds like an impossibility, but people on skateboards are miracle workers. They can do all kinds of stuff. I know some of you are skateboarders and you're looking at this and going, I can do that. Good for you. Chomp your food. Oh, I hate this so much. I hate this so much. Chomp your food with a smack and a slurp. There's a reason our family eats with the TV on. Yeah, from the time my kids were, before they were born, because Mr. S is a very loud lip smacker. And then younger Mr. S and Eric were also lip smackers. So, I mean, you can try to correct people, but after a while, it just gets to the point where you hate eating at the table with each other because you're either telling everybody how to behave or everybody's just chewing really loud. And frankly, I can't stand the sound, so it's really my personal problem. So we got to the point where we just watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune during dinner time. Okay. So one day a year, do all of these. So he says, take one day, get it out of your system. Yell, scream, shout, turn up your music, put the hose on the water pail, do all this stuff. One day a year. The rest of these days, be quiet, please. Okay. This is a parent who started out the quarantine going, we're going to slide down the staircase on a toboggan, and we're going to, play tag, and we're going to have great, and then we're going to have a great time. And then after the first week, it's just like, can you guys just be quiet, please? Okay, so this is actually very apropos for quarantining. But noise day, the idea that have one day, get it out of your system. The rest of the time, shh. Okay, we know what this is about. Of course, you probably knew it the first time I said it through, but it's always a good idea to take a poem apart, even if you think it's really easy. So let's do it one more time, and I'll try not to mess it up this time. Here we go. Noise Day, Shel Silverstein. Let's have one day for girls and boyses when you can make the grandest noises. Screech, scream, holler and yell, buzz a buzzer, clang a bell, sneeze, hiccup, whistle, shout, laugh until your lungs wear out, toot a whistle, kick a can, bang a spoon against a pan, sing, yodel, bellow, hum, blow a horn, beat a drum, rattle a window, slam a door, scrape a rake across the floor, use a drill, drive a nail, turn the hose on the garbage pail, shout, Yahoo! Hurrah! Hooray! Turn up the music all the way. Try and bounce your bowling ball. Ride a skateboard up the wall. Chomp your food with a smack and a slurp. Chew, chomp, hiccup, burp. One day a year, do all of these. The rest of the days, be quiet, please. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you research other Shel Silverstein poems. If you can't get a hold of his book, you can just type his name into the search bar of your search engine, and his poems will come up, and you get a chance to look at all of them. They're fantastic. Okay, so here we have on the note, Shel Silverstein uses onomatopoeias, words that sound like the noise they described, to write a list poem about noise. This is a list poem. It's just a list of things to do, specifically about noise made by children. Silverstein is popular with children because his poetry is lighthearted, funny, and ironic. That means it has a bit of a twist ending. So I strongly suggest you read his books of poetry, including Where the Sidewalk Ends, Yay, A Light in the Attic, and Falling Up. These are all really great books. And of course, if you can't get to them, then you can just type his name in and his poems will appear on the internet. He's all over the place. Okay, a more serious poem, thank you very much. But still using the onomatopoeias, still using sound. So we're really focusing on the sound element of imagery. And this one's called The Eagle. And this is in every college textbook, just about, because it is just 6 lines and it gives you a full picture of this eagle. And it brings you as the reader into the experience. So it's a classic poem. This was written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. His middle name isn't Lord, that's his title. So his name was Alfred Tennyson, but he was a lord in England. Okay. So he is writing this about the eagle. He grasped the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Ooh, ah. Okay, look at the note. It says, notice that Alfred Lord Tennyson uses carefully selected words, diction, to mimic the rough environment of the eagle. That mimicking is giving us the imagery in this poem. Crasp, crag, and crooked all start with the same harsh K sound. Tennyson's tone changed slightly with the eagle's point of view. Below the eagle, the sea is crawling. If you've ever looked at a picture or a video of the sea, or if you've ever been in an airplane and you've seen the sea from a distance and all you can see is the waves just barely moving on the sea, it looks like the sea itself is crawling. And he watches from the mountain walls, that would be the peaks of his mountains, letting the reader know the eagle is king of all he sees. Is that cool or what? Okay, let's do it. Break it apart. Ready? He grasped the crag with crooked hands. That hard K sound with all those C's, it's giving the idea of these crooked hands having talons and being really strong and really kind of creepy. Okay, this picture that is chosen, you can see the eagle here is actually grasping a piece of rock. That would be the crag in this part, with crooked hands meaning talons. He's grabbing onto it. This is a rock, so to grab onto it, you'd have to have some points and you have to have a lot of strength. close to the sun in lonely lands. That means he doesn't live where everybody else lives. He's far away. He is close to the sun. He's high up on the mountain, and there's no one else around him. Ringed with the azure world, he stands. So the world he is ringed with is the sky, because azure is another word for blue. Okay, so he stands on this crag that's an outcropping of rock, and he's ringed with the sky because he's so far up above everything else that there's nothing else around him. He's just ringed with the sky, and he stands there. And now he shifts, the poet shifts a little bit so we can actually see what the eagles sing at this point. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. So now we know a little bit more about where he's on the mountain looking down. He can see the sea below him, and he's watching it. He's so far up, however, that the sea looks like it's crawling toward the shore. He watches from his mountain walls. He's watching everything. From everything he views, he is the king of all of it. He can see everything. And like a thunderbolt, he falls. The idea of him falling like a thunderbolt gives that idea of quickness, of being so speedy that you kind of lose track of him, because thunder just pops up and then disappears almost immediately. There's also, because this is a very educated person writing this, there's also an allusion here to Zeus. When you think about Greek mythology, Zeus's weapon was the thunderbolt, and his aegis or symbol was the eagle. So saying that the eagle is falling like a thunderbolt gives a little bit of depth to this poem for people who are aware of Greek mythology, because then we can go, okay, yeah, I get that what you're saying. It's talking about power here. It's talking about a lot of power. The eagle being not only the king of all he sees, but almost like godlike up on this mountain, viewing the earth around him. He's not truly God. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that he is lifted up like a god in Greek mythology. Okay. So here we have him thunderbolting, falling. Now he's watching the sea, so we can kind of make an assumption, because we know a little bit about eagles from learning about them in like 6th grade, 5th grade science class. Eagles eat fish. They eat rodents. They eat all kinds of stuff, but they actually fall down towards their prey, pick it up with their talons, and keep going. But in this case, since we have the sea being viewed by the eagle and he's looking at the sea, and then all of a sudden he's like a thunderbolt falling, we can assume he's fishing. Okay, he sees something and he's going to go grab it. Okay, now that's just an assumption, but it's just kind of a cool assumption. Okay, let's read it one more time. We know what this is about. It's only 6 lines, but it is a classic, beautiful, beautiful poem. So here we go. Do it one more time. The Eagle, Alfred Lord Tennyson. He clasped the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun and lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt, he falls. Okay, so it's up to you now to do the homework for these 2 poems. But I also want to remind you that at the very beginning of this lecture, I spent a lot of time talking to you about going above and beyond the lectures and teaching yourself something. I'm not going to guide you in what you should teach yourself. That should be up to you. This is self-learning. So find an interest, something that you're really fascinated by, something you like to do, and do a little study on it. Find out a little bit of the history of it. If you love video games, it wouldn't be a bad thing to study the history of video games, or to look at the stories that the video games are offering you. I know a lot of video games are very story oriented, and I think that's awesome, because they didn't used to be that way. Now almost every video game has a story behind it. There's a whole background given for the characters and everything. So I just want to recommend to you that you find the things that you really enjoy and do a little bit of study on those things and increase your learning as you are teaching yourself. And I will talk to you again in literature on Tuesday. So have a really good weekend.